The Raptors season has mercifully come to an end. This is actually, was that the greatest moment of the Raptors season to you? Was it just being over? Because you do all these games. You got to watch them all. There's been nights where I have genuinely thought about you and the content that you have to make, and I'm what is he going to do today? Like, what is the angle?
Yeah, the angle, they beat you in a submission this year where it's like, you can't hope for wins anymore.
Yeah.
The angle is just like, all right, let's just only look at the positives because, like, the reality is, like, too negative all the time.
I have a question about that.
But. Yeah, so, like, I call it the Darko Rajakovic, like, approach. Like, it's the same thing he does.
You were throwing pizza parties. You were like, hey, you know what?
Yeah,
every night's a pizza party on my show.
Once in a while, I'm like, okay, I can't take it anymore. Like, when they played in Minnesota and they lost by 48 points, which is the franchise record for most lopsided loss. They also lost their 15th straight game that game. They also signed a guy out of the G League who was averaging 10 in the G League. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not averaging at least 20 to 30, ideally above 30, like, you're going to struggle when you come to the NBA. And, of course, since then, I think he's been blocked as many times as he's made shots. That's Malik Williams, who signed an 11-day contract, really, because, the Raptors needed just one more game out of him, and they got them last night. But in any case, they lose by 48 that game. And then after the game, obviously I'm upset. I'm like, look, even if you lose, there's a way to lose. Like, you can't, you know what I mean? Just don't set headlines when you lose. It's fine. You lose by 15, you lose by 20. Like, that's just a ho-hum kind of thing. But then after the game, Darko had one quote when he was searching for positives, as he always was. And he was like, we did see some positives. Like, guys were communicating on defense. And I was like, that's bar is rec basketball.
Yeah.
The bar is you got to communicate on defense.
It really
like,
is.
screen coming left, screen coming left. Yeah,
yeah.
So anyway, like, I feel for Darko. What else are you supposed to say? Like, hey, they made me start a G League center.
No, I know.
Who didn't even practice with us that day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
the G League center, he's doing great.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm happy for Malik. I think he got like probably close to $150K for that.
Yeah. It's nice. Good for him. Secure the bag, get some money.
No kidding,
that's
man.
all right. Okay, so it's the worst season since 2011 from a record standpoint. They had a major injury to Scotty Barnes that robbed us of any type of stretch interest, right? Where we went, hey, you know what? All right, the team has picked a direction, and now we're going to get to see Scotty Barnes operate with the new team and the new players, the new offense. And he'd actually just been criticized pretty heavily right before the injury.
Yep.
Like, I was at that Spurs game where Wembanyama, I went, oh my God, this is the greatest player that we might ever see. And Scotty Barnes was like, I'm going to pout. I'm going to drive at you a couple of times and then quit and pout. And we're criticizing him, and he came back. He was okay. He's looking certain good. And boom, injury. They have a gambling scandal.
Yep.
Which ends up becoming like something that I look at and go, oh, this will probably go away. It's like, nope, it's a major story. You even have Shaq on a pods going, I would punch him in the face. It was like a pretty embarrassing story for the Toronto Raptors. Yeah. We're getting video breakdowns of this guy. OG and Siakam get lost in trades. The latter in a pretty incredibly underwhelming way.
Yeah.
We get told that ticket prices are going up by quite a sizable amount.
Like another 20%.
Yeah, pretty good. 20% after seeing the season. Do the Raptors still have an identity or a culture under Masai Ujiri?
I don't think you can be honest and say yes right now definitively. I think that they're searching for a new thing, right? And the thing with that is you can find it, and if you really do want to look at positives, you can say that Scotty made an All-Star this year. I think Quickly and RJ are pretty promising as young starters. They've certainly shown what they can do. I like, by the way, how serious they are coming from New York. You could tell from when you have players coming from a different culture, they immediately step in and they're able to just lift the standard of play, and that shows you that your culture was really lacking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The fact that they just walked in and they're good, right? It's like how the former Raptors are good everywhere they go now. Like Norm is beloved by the Clippers, or Kyle keeps going everywhere, and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, right now the Raptors are just absolutely searching. And look, they try to hold on. They try to give that last core one last run. They gave him Jakob Poeltl, and they were like, go ahead and cook. And then they lost. And then now it's like, okay, wow, this is pretty terrible, and we need to pivot. And they took the last exit off the highway kind of deal, right? That's OG with half a year left on his contract. They got 2 starters for him. You got to say that's pretty good. Although OG certainly is very, very good for New York right now, and I'm very much looking to see what New York does in the playoffs. And then the Pascal trade, I mean, that's just underwhelming, man. Like, you look at all the prospects that Indiana had, and you came out of there with Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora.
Yeah.
Like, the picks
and
are...
you couldn't even flip Bruce Brown. That was part of the trade. I went, okay,
Right.
like, at least they'll flip this. And it was like, no.
Did you see Bruce Brown after the game? He's like, well, I've been playing on a knee injury, so...
Yeah, and you're like, cool.
Yeah.
That's nice.
All right.
That's nice to know.
I mean, we'll see.
I just, man, this is it, is you felt as though it's just such a hard departure from people who cover the Raptors, people who watch the Raptors, fans of the Raptors, whatever. Going from, well, they're trying to build Spurs North. And the Spurs end up, that goes away too. We just know that all time changes things. Nothing lasts forever. You don't end up having a cultural permanence, but it just, it evaporated so quickly. Yeah. It went from, okay, Masai doesn't tank, Masai doesn't lose, and then all of a sudden they're tanking in a season where they don't even own the rights to their pick fully in a draft that they gave up on a year before, that they looked at correctly, by the way. Actually, if you're supposed to have like real faith in the front office, you should look at the trades from last year when they traded the first for Pirtle and go, they were really right about this draft, Like they really kind of nailed it in terms of looking forward and looking ahead and saying, there's not a ton of value here. What are we going to do? We're going to take Zach Edey with the 13th overall pick and feel really sad about putting him out there every night? That's the one thing. That's it. It feels to me very rudderless right now. It feels very much like the plan is not a real vision. Whereas before, I've always felt like Masai has a vision. He's got his principles. He doesn't want to try to move off of these things.
Yeah.
And now it kind of feels like they're entering this offseason. People are talking about maybe signing a free agent of the Melton caliber. Go into this draft.
Would love DeAnthony Melton.
Of course, but that
love DeAnthony Melton.
But you go
back
in
to the days of like Jared Jack's coming on a.
But this is what I mean. Is it kind of feels like we're entering old Raptors stuff, which makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Under Masai Ujiri, I've never really felt that way since like he first came into the building.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's all entirely valid. I think for the team, if they would, the way they would probably spin it is we needed to clear out some of the older guys to allow the new guys to form a new identity.
Sure.
But the old identity was also quite good. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, that's what pulled everyone in as fans, was like, we see this competitive product night in and night out. We saw that they played hard. Look, they're at a talent deficiency. Like, ultimately, this whole situation would have been better if, like, Pascal was at that high end level that could carry the franchise, or that Fred was at that high level, and neither of them really could do it. But ultimately, they played like champions most times, and they gave it their best. I think for the younger group, you're just hoping that they find lightning in a bottle once again, right? Like in the same way that certainly back 10 years ago, I didn't feel that confidence about like, okay, Kyle and DeMar are going to be this like awesome combo, like. But all of a sudden they did, and they ran with it. And I think they're just kind of hoping and praying that Scotty, Quickly, RJ, Grady, they just go ahead and run with it. And they take it to another level. And it's certainly possible to some degree. My biggest concern right now is just the Raptors have been so bad defensively all year. And even when they had good defenders at the start of the season, right? Like you had OG Anunoby, who now he's going to play with the Knicks. Everyone realizes, wow, this guy could be like one of the best defenders in the NBA. And it's like, yeah, of course. You had Jakob Poeltl, who, they swear up and down that he's a top 10 center, especially defensively.
Yeah.
Because mostly he's shooting push shots on offense, right?
Well, and they paid him like a top 10 center, so.
Yeah, that too, which is honestly whatever. Like they're like, what, 4-28 this year without Jakob Poeltl? That's an incredible record.
Yeah.
But like, they had a strong defensive group to start the year, and they still were bad defensively. So like, I don't know, man. I mean, you're not going to get anywhere, especially with a young team, until you let them play defense. Like, you look at Orlando, the turnaround they've had. I'm really excited to see what they do in the playoffs. You look at even Houston making a 20-win jump. Yeah, they added some veterans, but they started playing defense, and they got a coach that, like, hammered them every single time if they didn't play defense. Like, he'll bench Şengün. He'll bench, like, Jalen Green if you don't play defense. I don't get that same sense from Darko. Darko was like, look, we're going to move the ball on offense. And he says that, like, every single time, and he's consistent with that, and they have improved on moving the ball on offense. But like the end result is also they're like one of the 5 worst defensive teams in the entire league. And until you move that to at least average, even the year that the Raptors jumped with Kyle and DeMar, they jumped to being good on defense. And Dwayne Casey came in and was like, we're going to play defense. And when we had Dwayne, you came on the Raptors show and we interviewed Dwayne. Well, I interviewed Dwayne. Sorry, I
watched you. It was pretty good.
Yeah, okay. You know what? I got to appreciate the
You asked all the questions that I said that I would have asked.
I did fully box you out. But one of the things Dwayne mentioned to us was like, yeah, I came in with the intent to like lay down the foundations on defense, and that actually did carry the Raptors for quite a long time. So we will see. I mean, I think I don't know, it's like a forest fire. You burn the whole thing, and you hope that there is like enough nutrients for like new trees to grow or whatever. But right now, we're very much in the scorched earth portion.
So I think this is what I'm trying to grapple with when it comes to. Like, you're in the scorched earth thing. I just want to know what the one thing is that you don't really want to burn down. Or, like, I want to know what sort of the anchor point is. Because for me, when the Raptors were supposed to be heading into this rebuild and kind of we all saw the writing on the wall, that's the scary part is I really had this faith in Masai Ujiri that was unparalleled with any other executive that I've ever known in this city. And I guess that's not saying much because this isn't exactly like championship city. Like, man, I had so much more faith in him than John Ferguson Jr. Like,
oh, wow, what a name.
I'm like, wow, I really locked into Masai. But that's the thing that scares me a little bit is looking back on the rebuild, everyone kind of knowing you had to pick a lane and then him zagging almost like defiantly at that last deadline with the Jakob Poeltl trade, saying, no, this is the core. Then he has a team that is kind of built around defensive guys. The league is going super offensive. Everybody's scoring. He's like, okay, no. But then all of a sudden they do a rules change where they basically say, all right, we're going to let guys defend differently. And you've traded some of your good defensive players for, I think, a little bit less than you could have gotten in return. It looks like when you're talking about the defense, I look at this team and I go, okay, I don't think that a team with Emmanuel quickly, or where he's going to all of a sudden be a defensive superstar. I don't think that RJ, he's like a competent defensive player. I don't think that Kelly Olynyk is going to ever give you good defensive minutes.
Yeah.
As much as I like Kelly Olynyk and some of the ball movement stuff, I look at this team and kind of what they put together, and it just feels so mishmash. And I don't really know what anyone is supposed to do here, what everybody's role is outside of trying to figure out, is Scotty Barnes going to be a number one? And is Quickly going to be a number two? And I have a lot of doubts about both of those things.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, until they completely show it to you night after night, like, not just in flashes, because you can always point to, like, here's a really good game from Quickly. Here's a really good game from RJ. Actually, RJ is probably the most consistent scorer on this team.
No question.
He goes to the basket every time, and he somehow always finds a way to score. Scotty probably definitely has the most upside on this team, and he's shown you the highest highs, especially two-way of all those guys. But, I mean, yeah, like, that's... it's funny because when you're describing this, what you're saying is that, like, the Raptors had they had innovative strategies previously.
Yeah.
Right? They were like, okay, you know what? Vision 6-9. We're trying something. It's different. It's unique.
But it was a plan.
We got a coach that is very creative and actually created something for this group. And it didn't ultimately work out. Realistically, they needed more shooters. But the thing is, like, now they're like, okay, well, we're seeing the whole league, as you mentioned, tilt towards offense. Everybody is running offense through their fives now. Well, now we all of a sudden have to have offense through their fives. They didn't have that before. First off, they didn't even have fives before. There no centers with that 6'9" group, all right? It was like Thad Young playing center or Pascal. Remember OG playing center against Jokic?
I mean, those were actually happy times for me because I loved watching him defend.
Yeah, they actually competed and played hard and could play defense. But, like, okay, fine. Now we got to move to this playmaking five kind of situation. We hire a coach now who is, like, very much updating the Raptors' like offense towards what it is now, league average offense. But in doing so, you have created this thing where it's like nobody guards anymore, right? And especially in the second half of the season, like obviously you could say, well, Scotty went down, Jakob went down. You can excuse them for everything. First off, you can't excuse it for like 2 months, okay? Like you really can't. And it's not like these other players have something to play for as well. The end of the roster guys, none of them really showed you anything, which is probably the most disappointing part of this whole run here. And then, like, yeah, it's just Kelly Olynyk with 4 guards all the time. Like, you're not going to win any games like that because defensively, you will genuinely be one of the worst teams in the league defensively when you do that. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see if there's be locker room cleanouts tonight. It's not going to be Darko. It's not going to be Masai. So, we will hear from them eventually. I mean, the players, they're going to say what they can say. But I think I want to know from, Darko and from Masai, what is the big brain strategy that goes into this, right? Because that's ultimately what they're responsible for. Maybe not the day-to-day stuff, the nitty-gritty. That's probably more Darko rather than Masai. But what is the bigger scheme vision here? Because there's nothing really cutting-edge or innovative about, playmaking through your five, and the fives are Jakob Poeltl and Kelly Olynyk in a world that, like, Domantas Sabonis exists, that Nikola Jokic exists, Joel Embiid exists. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I get playmaking through your five when you have those kind of guys. It's just not going to be as cutting edge. So We'll see. I mean, the Raptors have taken on a number of flyers and some young guys, and if they use all their picks, they'll add even more flyers. But there's a real chance that like next year could be similar-ish to this one right now.
So I guess like ultimately what I'm really driving at here, though, is again that lack of strategy, that lack of cutting edge innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I think about Darko as a coach, like because this has been the last 48 hours prepping for this interview with you, I was thinking about like, hey man, what are all the things I want to talk about? Darko was a backup plan. Like, Ime Udoka was the original idea for this team. And if you think about, like, what his principles are as a coach versus what Darko's are, it's, like, pretty stark contrast there. You know what I mean?
Pretty different.
Pretty different idea.
Pretty different.
And so, of course, you have to pivot in sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to have a backup plan. But you went to this coach and, like you said, played 3-5, a lot of offense, not a lot of defense. You pumped all your vets out, and even when they were here, it was kind of there might be two different locker rooms happening, right? Fred kind of kept saying that over and over and over again about the season prior.
That's what you always hear. After losses last season, it was Fred and Pascal fuming and like really, really upset about the results, and the other guys are kind of like whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. And so you had young guys that weren't really buying into the culture of the vets, and now I just, like I said, I don't know where the cultural anchor is for this team moving forward unless it is Scotty Barnes, but that just feels like so much to be throwing on his shoulders, especially considering that we haven't seen that consistently from him, and he's young. I think Grange wrote a really great piece about, hey, it's like way too much for him, way too soon for him, when he had the like walk into the locker room moment. But everything I look at is always like, okay, so you made the Kelly Olynyk trade, you wanted the guy for place, okay, fine. Your draft picks this year in a draft that you weren't really interested in, we'll see how they kind of look around your team. Fine. You got your backup coach. You got a trade with the Knicks that I think everybody likes that trade. Yeah. But it should be noted that the Knicks made that trade when they were in their most competitive window, since when? And they went, we're willing to lose these two guys to get OG to try to pursue our opportunity as champions. Like, I just can't point to the one move they made where I say, oh, okay, well, that's the direction. That's the way that Masai is looking at this. And even if you go back to that deadline again, I hate referencing it over and over again, but when he said we feel like those prices will still be available to us moving forward, then it turned out to be like conclusively not true because we knew there were deals from Minnesota and New Orleans for these guys that were like more of a actual deep price point.
I think you could have even gotten more from the Pacers if you made the trade in the offseason.
Of course you could have.
Yeah.
Man, we knew what the Atlanta Hawks offer was. That was better than what they ended up getting for the Pacers.
You know what? I think this year kind of was TBD just because Kobe Buffkin barely played.
Sure.
And then the game he did play, he actually was the guy guarding Malachi for the 50-piece, which is the funniest, probably the funniest story of the season for me was Malachi getting the 50-piece.
And then the next game having like
he was like
2
for 12.
Oh,
man, I love Malachi, but like, damn, that wasn't working out. By the way, you remember the start of the season when Darko was like, Malachi, you got to smile. You're ugly when you don't smile.
Oh, my God.
I was like, all right, man, what in the gym teacher is this?
I was going to say, this really, they could have clipped like 48 Darko quotes from this year and just put it in like a flip book and been like, did he really say this, or was this a made up coach, or is this from, like you said, a gym teacher's quote? I just don't. Here's my thing. It's like, okay, they picked a direction, right? They picked a direction, but I don't feel like I know what that direction actually is. Like, they're going into next season. Maybe they don't have their pick again. Maybe that doesn't convey to the San Antonio Spurs, and they walk into a season and you go, okay, so you've got quickly RJ and Barnes. You've got Grady Dick, and you've still got those two bigs. It looks like the idea here would be to try to once again compete for a play-in position, which is kind of what it was this year. You're just sort of in the same spot with a different cast of characters. It doesn't really feel like a rebuild. It doesn't really feel like a reset. It just kind of feels like you're walking into a year with different guys doing the same thing.
Well, the key word that the front office likes to use, especially when Bobby does it, because I think Bobby obviously is much less charismatic than Masai. Even I like Bobby, but like, come on, he's just not as charismatic.
No, but Masai is like a real professional speaker. Like, Masai has made me feel things where I'm like, I'm so proud to be from here. Like,
if the whole GM thing doesn't work out, he should run Toastmasters. Like,
yes, no question.
He's got a lot of riz, as they say now. But like, for for them, the key word, especially at the trade deadline, was optionality. You know, we now have the option to do this. We have the option to do this. We acquired optionality. You know, even talking about the Bruce Brown contract, it's the ultimate optionality. You could pick up his option and trade him, or you could let him go and then also re-sign him in a different contract, or you can trade him at the whatever. A lot of options with that. I think what they're looking at the whole roster is like, we're waiting for these players to break, and then we'll adapt accordingly. Rather than just like, we're going to set up on this course and we're going to need everybody to follow in line with this exact strategy. So they're just waiting on the players, I think, to take them in that direction. And largely, it's going to be Scotty. You know what I mean? Like, I think this year was really promising for him. He makes his first All-Star game. What's the next jump? Because that alone is not going to carry this team even back to the play-in. Well, maybe back to the play-in. I don't know. The Hawks are, it depends on what you define as the play-in. Like, the Sixers, who are like 21 games above the Raptors, or is it the Hawks, who are like 11 games above the Raptors? Ideally, you're closer to the Sixers portion, but it's like, dude, what's going to have to happen next year for the Raptors to be like, what did the Sixers win this year? 46 games?
That's like, Sixers won 47 games.
That'd be a miracle if the Raptors won 47 games next year, man.
It's not going to happen for them.
No, unless there's like a superhuman jump from Scotty and probably from the rest of the guys.
That's what I keep looking at, though, and thinking about the landscape of the East, right, so I don't see a team that's going to take a step back other than maybe the Cavs, because they make maybe a Mitchell trade. But even then, it feels like they're such a weird team because they had guys in another lineup all year, and then they'd be like, oh, they don't have Garland and they're better. And you're like, okay, well, this is maybe they don't have Garland and Mobley and they're better. And you're like, okay, well, what is this team exactly? Where are they going? But I don't think the Raptors are going to jump them, regardless of whatever position they end up taking. Go through it. Like, maybe it's the Bulls. Maybe it's the Hawks. Maybe you jump the Nets. That's three teams at most.
Those are three of the saddest teams in the NBA, though, by the way. Like, we know that, right?
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, you really want to enter the conversation with those teams? I kind of thought that under Masai anyways, I would never feel like the Raptors would be lumped in with those groups. And right now, I kind of do. And you're right. A lot of it is Scotty. And you know, if we're doing biggest pause of the season, it has to be him.
He's number one. Yeah.
He's number one. He also does benefit a little tiny bit, though, from that injury from a narrative standpoint, which is like, we never did get to see that long stretch of play down the stretch with just him sort of leading the charge.
I don't know if it's benefit. I think that was actually, when you look back at it, like, that was the biggest loss from this year.
No, loss for the team. But I'm saying from him, from a narrative standpoint of belief, is that like, you got to remove it and kick it all the way over to next year, where there's like a reset and you know what you're actually coming into. You don't have to do it on the fly.
Yeah, but I think it was just a missed opportunity by the whole team. Like,
for sure.
You made all the trades, and then you just want to see how it works, right? It didn't really matter how it would work this year, but you at least want to see it, and you just didn't get to for like more than maybe even 10 games with the post-trade deadline kind of group. And I think honestly, Scotty did show some pretty good things when he was healthy.
Agreed.
This is back in like February at this point. So, but like, yeah, I mean, you would have loved to see how competitive that is, and then adjusted your offseason strategy accordingly. Now you don't even get that chance. So it's all just kind of one big TBD.
Yeah,
we're all like, hey, it's great that Scotty's cheering for them on the bench. I'm like, that's like the bare minimum. Like,
oh, I don't know who said that.
Oh, okay. All right,
I was gonna say that had to be like
I might have said that, to be honest.
I was gonna say,
you know,
like,
the
nice,
reaction
Scotty.
podcast, I had to reach deep for some of those.
My only Scotty on the bench take was, I don't know why he didn't say the thank you to the fans at the end of the season. That part was weird to me. They ran Grady Dick out there to be like, thanks fans for the year, and I was like, my ticket prices are about to go up 20%. I want to at least see the future star of the franchise send me off for 2 seconds and say a thing rather than the rookie. It was a minor thing, but I went. Right. But no, it's the same thing where it comes to the theme of this for me is that I'm questioning the leadership in a way that I never really thought I would with Masai.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm really questioning leadership because now it's the first time in a long time since Kyle and DeMar where you haven't really known what the next guy is going to be as a leader. Like, Scotty seems like a fun guy to be around when things are going great. And when things have gone poorly, I feel like he's showcased that he can pout pretty hard, that he can be pretty much a huge downer as well. Like, again, very young kid, but that's still who you're putting the franchise's, you know, hopes and dreams into his hands. So I think when you enter that level, you start to get criticized a little bit on that level. You try to be patient. I think it always comes with that caveat of, hey, man, how old's Scotty now? 22, 23? Like, he's
like 22, I think.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's a kid. But in this league, you become not a kid super fast. Like, what is it?
Yeah, sure.
24, 25?
I mean, they've certainly accelerated the timeline. I think, look, ideally, you know, you can compare, like, for example, Wemby. You look how serious Wemby is with everything that he approaches. The guy goes to sleep at like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Reads books before going
he's
to
like
bed.
Shohei. They're the same guy. They're like the exact same in terms of what they do on and off the field.
Yeah, okay, wow. That's, I mean, I hope he doesn't, I guess he speaks English, so he doesn't need the translator.
Yeah, no, he's not. Yeah, don't get robbed. Don't get robbed.
Thank goodness, Wendy. I thought it just sucks that Shohei's story is so good, and then he has this one little blemish.
No, what really sucks is that he didn't come play baseball here and that we weren't doing the scandal here. That's the thing that hurts the most still.
That's tough. That's tough. Yeah, I heard Sushi Yujin is still under reservation for a party of 50 for Yusei Kikuchi's wife.
Yeah, who makes up for that? Like, who makes good? Who makes good on that bill?
They're just like, kind of a rude move if you book the whole restaurant. Like, you know what you pull in a night.
They're taking the banner down, like, welcome Shohei.
They're like, whoops. But, I mean, I think, you look at Wemby, like, how serious he is as a young player. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you do know right away, like, what your future franchise is going to be based on sort of, like, the personality of the franchise. And, of course, Wemby is, like, literally a once-in-a-lifetime kind of, like, deal. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the Spurs won a lot of games this year regardless. Although, by the way, towards the end of the season, you saw Wemby going crazy. Like, the fact that they beat the Nuggets, like...
Last night.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah. So, it's like, I think for the Raptors, like, you're going to need to see growth and maturity from all these guys, and they're getting thrown into the water. They really are. And I think that's a good point you're mentioning. It's like, yes, it is very easy to have good vibes when things are winning and things are going well, but it's like, how do you adapt to the losing? And this year was like relentless positivity to the losing. You know what I mean? Like, not once did you hear Darko really. You never even heard once that he ripped the team, or even said things that were like remotely critical. Right? They were mostly just like, well, we have a plan for him to improve. That's like the most that you really heard, him like specifically criticize the team. Once in a while, I mean, when you have a 25 and 57, season, you saw him say like this effort was unacceptable, but it was not like I'm gonna rip the team.
No.
It was just kind of like I gotta say it.
He never used a major bullet, and I think that makes sense considering the circumstances of the season. Like,
it makes sense considering he was taking over for Nick, who like they kind of like went for everything opposite to Nick when you really look at the bigger picture.
Which is crazy though, because again, when they wanted Ime, it was they're actually getting more hard ass Nick, an equally hard ass as Nick. They wanted a different guy. But kind of in at least attitude and contemporary. Like, you don't think Ime would have ripped this team multiple?
Absolutely,
like,
man.
what it would have looked like after a lot of these games? How do you think he would have handled the Scotty Barnes leaving the bench early situation? Like, it probably wouldn't have been a whole, like, it was a mistake. We talked about it, and it was actually totally fine. And then Barnes going immediately to the media after being like, we never talked about that.
Yeah. That was tough.
Yeah, that really was
man,
tough.
Raptors PR staff, you guys have helped a lot with the show. You guys got a lot of guests, but come on, man. This is the one PR messaging for the...
God, that one was brutal. I guess that's just it, man. You forgive a lot of this season in terms of some of the circumstances, how difficult they were. For Darko coming in under these circumstances. For Scotty all of a sudden having to be the guy on the fly and then getting hurt. For Ujiri in some sense that at least he tried to double down on his guys and then all of a sudden he knew it wasn't working. He tried to pivot. He did the best he could given the circumstances. But now it's a lot of, okay, well, given the circumstances, but yes, let's see what it is moving forward. And I just want to see somebody be the accountable guy on this team. And I'm like, the most accountable guy to me that I can actually rely on, you said it, is like RJ. Well, I'm like, okay, I know who RJ is. Yeah. I know what he can provide. Yeah. But that's not enough to be
He's a serious individual, though. He really is.
He is. He's awesome, dude. I love RJ Barrett.
Like, I like Quickly too a lot. Like,
I like Quickly too, but it's still very TBD for me in terms of whether or not he's what we saw in New York versus what the Raptors are hoping he can be.
It is. You're asking him to be making a big jump. He did like scale up his numbers and everything like that, but it also comes with like a much bigger opportunity. Let's be honest.
And no leverage. Like, did he play? He played one leverage game with the Raptors, and that was that Thunder game where Scotty took the ball and then gave it back to him and was like, no, I'm not going to take the shot.
Well, though he gave it back to Quickly, or he gave it back to Gary, but that game was also another one where it was like Scotty was playing really well through three quarters, and then from fourth quarter and the first and second overtime, he just didn't want to be involved, which is also a little strange. But in any case, like, a lot of questions for sure. I think for this team, like, again, like they're just hoping that somebody takes this team, runs with it, and then they'll adapt. But like, it is kind of incredible that after a 25-win season, no one's going to put their hand up and say, like, hey, this was really terrible. It's unacceptable. Like, I would love to hear Masai say that. But, I mean, realistically, like, this is also not a novel situation. Like, Darko's not the first time he's been, as a rookie head coach, put in a situation where they tore down the team. That's actually like a classic playbook for a rookie head coach.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Most rookie head coaches are not like Nick Nurse being like, hey, guess what? We're going to get you Kawhi Leonard and Marcus Gasol, and it's going to be great. You know what I mean? We already have a culture built in. You were already here for that. Just like, run a boxing one on Steph in the finals, and, it's going to, work out, and you're going to be a legend forever. Like, most rookie head coaches come in, they tear the whole team down, and they got to like sit and answer for a 20-win season that really isn't entirely their fault. And we've seen young guys being placed into a situation before where it's like a lot of trades mid-season, and now you get promoted to a bigger role. And we've seen front offices being like, well, our previous project didn't work out, now we got to pivot towards a different direction. All that is just like a pretty standard fare. Like, I know it's like in Toronto, we haven't seen this in over a decade.
Yep.
We've been blessed. We really have been blessed. The question is, like, what separates, like, what shows your true test as an executive, as a coach, as young players, is like, how do you then pull this from being a 25-win team to eventually growing and, getting back to the playoffs? Because right now you can't see that avenue, but at the same time, I would say the same thing when 13-14, when the Raptors were coming into that season with Rudy Gay, with DeMar DeRozan, with Kyle Lowry, like Amir Johnson, Jonas Valanciunas. Like, I didn't know what that team was going to do. I thought they were going to tank, and rebuild and tear it apart for Wiggins. And then they suddenly flipped it around. Now, the East was a lot easier back then. But, yeah, I mean, that's the task ahead of the Raptors. And we will see. Nobody can tell you with a straight face that they're guaranteed to get back to that point.
I guess the feeling I have with that is during those times, the Raptors were very much like the nickname was always the Craptors.
Expectations are really low. You're right.
The expectations for the Raps were very different from what they are now. Masai, the thing about him that is so incredible is that he completely shifted the mindset of a fan base that was like, win a first-round playoff matchup. Oh, my God, that would be incredible to do that.
That's part of why we love him. That's why he was like, when the Raptors traded for Kawhi, and weirdly enough, it was like a lot of negative reaction. Even going into training camp, it was like, media day. I remember sitting there media day, and all the questions are like, well, is Kawhi even going to show up? And then he did show up, and it was like, is he going to stay?
He looked like a hostage when he did first show up, though, like that photo.
He fully did, yeah. Bobby Masai had like a gun put in his back and everything. He's like, you better smile.
Yeah. It's like that. You've seen that photo of the elderly couple holding on to Connor McDavid in a photo at the airport? It's like that was the same thing as the hostage photos. Kawhi is that you could have just subbed him in for that.
Basically, right? But and that's when Masai broke into one of his famous speeches, and he was like, believe in yourself, believe in the city. Toronto, you know what I mean? And he said that before they won the championship. Yeah. But I think what he was identifying was a real thing with not just the Raptors fan base. It was pretty specific to that one too. But like just into Toronto in general. It's like, look, I know that the rest of the teams here have not done well. That's not on me. All right. We brought in this player. We've done something historic, and you're about to see it. And then they did. That was legendary. We've seen all those things from Masai. He's always been boosting the Raptors' confidence this whole time. Even his first ever speech when he went out to Jurassic Park the first year in 2014, he's like, F Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's the best.
You know what I mean? And look, whatever, they lost. But like, he gave you that confidence to go in there and kind of compete. Like, that's part of the reason you love him. But I don't know what he could possibly say in a couple of days when he eventually takes the podium that's going to give you that belief, that's going to give you that confidence in this group again.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. Is like when you're talking about, hey, they're gonna do their plan as dictated by the way that these players start to play next year, right? That they're going to adapt to what they see from Quickly. They're going to adapt to what they see from Scotty. And I guess this feels kind of like the first time it's been that way. Whereas before it was Masai setting it and being like, this is what it's going to be. Even coming into this year. Yeah. Like it was, again, at least another part of his vision going, well, you know what? Let's see it. Let's see these guys together. And you felt like, okay, well, it'll be tough to bring OG back and it's risky, but maybe he's still thinking about it this way. It'll be tough to bring Siakam back, but maybe this is still the way that he's looking at this. Yeah. He wants to see it. Now, having it flipped to just, all right, you guys basically determine what's going to happen. It's like, well, now it feels like one of the Raptors' biggest advantages is removed, which is the executive that has that like that deep, big brain plan that nobody else ends up having. Okay, a little quick rapid fire before we wrap up. Are you rooting for the pick to be conveyed? 54% that the Raptors keep. Do you want it this year, or do you want it to be over with?
I'm waiting for May 12th because that's when you get this chance. By the way, the Raptors, I think 46% chance you keep it.
No, 54% chance you keep it.
It might be flipped, man. I think we're under 50-50.
We're under 50-50?
Yeah, we're at 46%. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever. Honestly, like I'd rather
all that tanking, and you're like, you have less than a 50% chance at getting a top 5 pick or top 6 pick in the worst draft that we've ever known.
We saw we saw some generational tanking this year.
45.8% is what they have a chance at.
For a draft that like absolutely is not that strong. Like
it's horrific.
It really isn't that strong. We saw some generational tanking. Like Delano Banton went 0 for 15 from 3 last night. 0 for 15. Anyway. But I think I'd actually.
That's a shocking. Like that's a crazy. This is
that one is pretty wild.
0 for 15. Yeah. Like when you're looking at it and going, it's your 13th. You're like, this is the one.
You're like, no, this is it right here. I would honestly, I'd rather convey it this year and then control my draft for next year, just in case next year goes really poorly. That's the one you definitely don't want to lose your first round pick to in that draft. I mean, you look at the prospects in that draft, and it's like, man. What happened in this 1 year that just caused this like difference between the 24 draft and the 25 drafts? Because that one has some special players.
Yeah, I'm the same. I hope the Spurs are making the pick. I don't care if it's 7. I don't care if it's 8. You look at every mock draft and it's like, who's in those slots? Like Dalton Connect, who's 24-year-old small forward. Yeah. You're like, okay. Who got blocked in the biggest moment of his career was him getting completely eviscerated by Zach Edey.
Right. Like, I think it was Zach's like one block of the tournament kind of feels like. Sorry, man.
Yeah, but you look at this draft and it's awful. It's really, really bad. I'm trying to watch the tournament.
It's not strong, man.
Dude, I'm like.
You got to have, it takes imagination. Dude. Which is like, you didn't really need imagination to be like, oh, Wemby's going to be amazing. You just need eyes and you're like, wow, okay, this is amazing. But like, this year's draft, I mean, with some of the guys in the G League Ignite who like won like 4 games all year, they shut down the whole program. But you're like, okay, if I squint, Matas Bazuelos,
guess what? You know why he's my guy?
I kind of like him
because I've never seen him. So I'm like, who my guys are? All the dudes, Sar.
You're not watching Australian basketball?
No, that's the point. I'm like, let me just dream on something. My biggest fear always was the Raptors like drafting European guys. That was always my least favorite. I'm like, don't make me research this. Let me just watch like an American guy from the tournament, like please.
Sure,
And then they'd be like, no, we're gonna take. Although I will
Bruno
say,
Caboclo.
I will. Yes, exactly. And now that's all I'm rooting for because of this draft. I like watch Cody Williams play. I'm like, that's all of him. Like, can we get this guy some food? Like, can he eat? He looks like. Imagine having him out there defending as well, like Grady Dick and him and Kelly Olynyk. Can the Raptors just get one guy that I can believe in, could not get posted up and scored on?
That's what I actually want. If the Raptors actually get the first overall pick, I'd actually like Sar. 7-footer who can actually really move.
Fine. Good.
But, like, what's our chance of the number 1 pick? Like 14%, maybe even less? Like, come on, man.
It's not going to happen. Okay. Are you bringing back Gary Trent? Or are you bringing back Bruce Brown?
I'm not bringing back Bruce Brown. And with Gary, I'd offer him the exact same contract he's on right now for 2 years. And that's it.
So for me, the only way you're bringing back Brown is for an immediate flip in a trade, like
optionality.
Yeah, optionality.
Oh, great.
I'm saying goodbye to Gary Trent.
Really?
I just have to. Yeah. Like, I know how great his dad has been to you. It's some of the most electric podcasting on planet Earth.
You know that Kawhi hostage photo? That's me with the Gary Trent family, man. What am I going to say? I'm going to trade him? No, hell no.
No, you're correct. There's got to be a political answer. But for me, this is just a thing where you can. I really do think you can only have so many Gary Trent emotional types on your team.
Okay. All right.
And I think you already are at the saturation point of that. Like, I can't have another minus defender who jumps routes to try to get steals, and then you look at his steals numbers are always like, no, the rest of the defense is bad. Inconsistent, night in, night out.
So who's playing shooting guard then?
Well, I think that you have to hope that this is going to be either one of your draft picks or this is going to be Grady Dick or, you're bringing in Bruce Brown back. I'd rather have Bruce Brown back than...
Really?
Yeah, Gary Trent.
Gary? Nah,
Just because he's on the 1-year deal and I'm like, okay, everybody just saw this guy on a championship team. Like, the things that apply at the deadline to getting Bruce Brown still apply to me moving forward. Like, he could at least be a trade piece for you. They've had Gary for 2 years going, he's available. And it was like... Yeah, you can get a second-round pick. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think you can't come back with the same locker room, in my opinion. You have to have
shake it up. All right.
You have to have some guys out, And it can't just be
who's going to emerge as a top dog in this locker room,
dude. It has
personality wise. It doesn't have to be who's on the court, like personality wise.
So I still think it has to be Barnes, that he has to evolve into that role. I still think that it's going to be RJ from like a professionalism standpoint. Like he's going to be
confidence in that.
Yes, that he's going to be the accountability guy, but that quickly has to be he and Scotty. The hope is, if you're a Raptors fan, like the dream of all dreams. Is that those two guys actually have synergy, that those two guys actually get along, and that those two guys are actually holding each other accountable for some of the things you're talking about, like defensive slippages or, culture stuff, that they actually look at it and go, you know what, this is our chance to do it. We have total run of the place. What are we going to do? What do we want to build? Rather than just being out like, and trying to collect a bunch of stats and going, oh, we made like all-star and fringe all-star and look at our statistics, but the record is kind of similar to what it was last year.
I agree.
But to me, it's like, I think you have to shake a little bit of this up. You have to remove some of the guys. You can't just refresh the page and go, oh, you're back. And when you say the thing about like, well, who plays shooting guard? You know what that reminds me of? When they traded for Rudy Gay. And people were like, well, how are they going to use the money anyway? Because that's old Raptors mentality, where it's like, well, you might as well just get Rudy Gay because they're never going to be able to get a free agent here. And I'd be standing down there watching it going, I can't believe they traded for a guy that everyone in the NBA knows, like, this isn't it.
He's a fake good player.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, they did get that Clippers game. They did. They got that Clippers game.
You know what? He was actually not bad for a game-winning shot.
Yeah, it's fine. So I was going to ask you your Darko grade for year one, but I think we kind of got to that place.
It's kind of incomplete, but like, look, man, he had good players at the start of the season. You can't give him that excuse at the start of the season.
Sure.
And they very much fumbled the start of the year.
So Masai re-signed in 2021, according to Grange. It's $15 million a year. Are we sure he's going to see this rebuild through? What's your over/under on years you're confident Masai Ujiri is still going to be here?
I think when you pay a man $50 million, you're going to keep him through his contract.
Okay.
You're not going to pay him 15 just to like sit at home. Right? So he's got 2 more years. Okay. And then depending on how that turnaround goes, maybe you'll re-up. But we know Masai's not going to take less than 15. And if you're, Keith Pelley coming in and you're like, all right, I'm the new MLSE CEO. You got to answer to me now. Let's see what you've done here. It's like 15 is a high number, I still think back on this, by the way, with where they're at. Ujiri's contract with the Raptors includes $15 million a year salary with the ability to earn more in incentive pay if the value of the franchise continues to increase. And if you read the Grange and Elliott piece, I thought about Masai because of the way that it could end up going for Tannenbaum and the way that the partial sale ended up happening and the franchise estimated value and what Masai has. He's going to be a very rich man. Oh, I mean, yeah, of course. And he deserves it. Here's the thing. He actually does deserve it, right? But I think it's just a matter of, like, you're not looking at it from the Raptor fan perspective. You're looking at it from, like, the MLSE president perspective or CEO perspective. Looking at it like, okay, if you're the board, are you going to pay him again for this? It's like they were, like, reluctant to, like, even give him this money even after he won the championship. He did the impossible. Now it's like, well, he kind of got to rebuild and they're maybe in the play-in. It's like, it's not the same sales pitch. It just isn't.
They got the Pacers draft pick next year too. He's like,
oh man,
sell tickets. They got the Pacers pick. I actually think it's funny. Everyone's always talked about statues of guys that are going to get put in here, and whether there should be a Kawhi statue and Kyle jersey retirement, and all the stuff with Vince. And I actually think that, like, someday there's no question that there should be a Masai statue. Like, that he is going to be a statue-worthy executive for the city, just in terms of changing the mindset. The thing that breaks me in doing this segment is that it's like, I just can't believe how quickly it changed for me. Like, where it went from, I thought this guy, when they were going, oh, he might go to a soccer team, I'm like, let him run whatever he wants. Like, let him run any business he wants. He is excellence embodied.
Crystal Palace will be so lucky to have him.
They beat Red Sox? Sure, go run a baseball team. He'll figure it out. He'll believe in Boston.
Oh, man. God.
It would happen. Okay, last question. Most interesting first-round matchup for you?
Most interesting first-round matchup? I'm going to be a sicko, man. I really want to see what Cavs Magic is about. I can't wait to tune into NBA TV, man.
I don't hate that. That's
what I'm saying. Like, I want to see how far the Magic get with this, because I think offensively they're just, like, not that strong, but defensively, I don't know. So yesterday I was watching the Raptors game on the main screen because that's my job, and then I was watching Orlando versus Milwaukee, and it's shocking, another underwhelming performance by Milwaukee, who finally relinquished control of the 2 seed. But, like, I'm watching that game, and I was like, yo, Orlando is cutting off everything.
Yeah,
they're the I mean, Boston, but like besides Boston, the best defensive team in the entire Eastern Conference, and like nobody's really talking about them. So I can't wait to tune into NBA TV.
I want to see Suns Wolves. That's
Suns Wolves. That's pretty
Suns
good. Suns
Wolves, and close behind. We've seen it so many times, but this Clippers Mavs one has different stakes because I feel like whoever comes out as the only one that actually has a chance at beating the Thunder, or sorry, the Nuggets, who somehow did not end up with the 1 seed. Pretty incredible. Hey man, we got to run. You got to run.
Yeah.
Future project TBD.
Yeah.
I loved seeing all the, accolades and the praise that you end up getting, making your announcement. Obviously, like, I'm a huge fan. I think that there are, like, when you do this stuff, you have to be authentic. Otherwise, it doesn't resonate with people. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And, like, you having the mix of, like, passion for what you do, the authenticity that you bring to the microphone, the fact that, like, you're an uncompromising guy. I think it's very admirable. I think a lot of people look at it, and it's impossible to replicate. And so, congrats on everything, and I really look forward to all the stuff. I'm going to miss you here, that's for sure.
I appreciate you.
But no,
you can still call me, man.
Yeah, I know.
I'm happy to do this show.
I will. But yeah, man, good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you, man.